Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the special seminar New Southern Policy Plus Reinforced Commitment Towards Building Prosperous Partnerships. This online event is organized by the Embassy of the Republic of Korea in the Philippines and the UP Korea Research Center. I am Aldrin Lee, OIC Director of the UP Korea Research Center, and I will be your moderator for the first session of today's event. In this webinar, renowned scholars and experts will share their insights and prospects about NSP Plus and how the three core pillars, peace, prosperity, people, can further intensify cooperation with ASEAN on various fronts. Today's webinar is twofold. In the first part, we will hear a keynote speech from Dr. Won-gi Choi of the Korean National Diplomatic Academy, and discussion by three discussants on NSP will follow. In the second session, there will be a roundtable where panel members from diverse backgrounds share their insights on NSP Plus. Before we begin our program, we would like to remind our viewers on some house rules. You may send in your questions and comments throughout the presentations and discussions in the YouTube chat room. If possible, please introduce yourself with your name and affiliation when raising questions. The questions will then be collected by the UPKRC staff and answered during the open forum. At this point, please allow me to introduce His Excellency Dong Man Han, Ambassador of the Embassy of the Republic of Korea in the Philippines, for his opening message.
Good morning, everyone. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Ako po si Handongman, Ambassador ng Korea sa Pilipinas. Ikinagagalak ko kayo makasama ngayon. Salamat sa inyong pagtalo. Una sa lahat, nais ko magpasalamat kay Attorney President Concepcion of the UP, who will share his insight with us. But marunong ako konti Tagalog, so from now on I will speak in English. Thank you for inviting me, and it's my great honor and privilege to be here with all of you today. And I would like to express my deep gratitude to the UP Korea Research Center, who organized this very meaningful event. And also my special thanks to go to Keynote Speaker, Professor Won-gi Choi, and many panelists. From Korean side, also I'd like to express my thanks to Dr. Omuni and also Dr. Kim Jong-un, who joined us. Well, yesterday I had meetings with Philippine Foreign Secretary Lok-shin. Of course, I have discussed with him about the future path of Korea-Philippine ties, as well as Korea-ASEAN relationship. Why today's webinar is quite meaningful and fitting, because today marks the first anniversary of Korea-ASEAN Commemorative Summit held in Busan just last year, in the year of 10th anniversary of the strategic partnership between Korea and ASEAN. Where we are going to look into the newly disclosed New Southern Policy Plus strategy, and to hear from many distinguished panelists and the participants on how to implement it on the way forward. so particularly in the context of the Philippines. So to be sure, the new Southern policy achieved a lot for the last 3 years, pillar by pillar, to have a people-oriented community. But I am now going to go into details, so as I am sure that it will take over an hour. So let's jump into our topic right away. But despite what the NSP has achieved so far, factors such as new policy demands rising from COVID-19 and emerging regional security environment require innovative thinking and approach. To respond actively to these challenges, President Moon Jae-in of Korea, while he remains committed to regional peace and prosperity, announced the new Southern Policy Process Strategy during the recent 21st ASEAN-Korea Summit, of course, which was welcomed by ASEAN leaders. Well, the NSP Plus strategy lays out fresh, feasible initiatives centered on the 7 key areas of cooperation, of course, including comprehensive healthcare cooperation. So details will be introduced by my friends, Professor Won-gi Choi. So what I took note of is that ASEAN also launched the ASEAN comprehensive strategy, comprehensive recovery framework at the recent ASEAN-related summit. Thus, it's my hope Korea and the ASEAN could enjoy co-prosperity by combining the 5 key areas proposed by ASEAN with the NSP Plus strategy. Now, Korea and the ASEAN are in the same boat to navigate a long journey to achieve co-prosperity. So let's go together for our bright future based upon our solid friendship and partnership. So sabay-sabay nating takin para sa ating pagkakaibigan at samahan. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Han. We're deeply honored by your presence today. Now, let us hear from the President of the University of the Philippines, Mr. Danilo Concepcion, through his video message.
I congratulate the Embassy of the Republic of Korea, Ambassador Hang Dong-man, who has been such a good friend of UP, and the UP Korea Research Center for pulling through in these difficult times to organize this forum. My heartfelt congratulations as well to the webinar participants for crossing barriers of space and taking precious time and effort to share knowledge with this gathering. As the head of the university, I am particularly happy to see the proactive role of people in the university in realizing a very worthwhile initiative. As a Filipino, I appreciate the importance that the Korean government has been giving our country and the region. We appreciate being part of a dynamic, responsive, and respectful friendship that sincerely looks out for the other one's welfare, as manifested in President Moon Jae-in's New Southern Policy, or NSP. Not only the NSP, for that matter, but a track record of more than 30 years of ASEAN-ROC dialogue, the last 10 years of partnership, of which has borne enough fruit to inspire intensification. All these years, we have our countries witnessing and enjoying the benefits of growing trade, cultural and knowledge exchange, shared solutions, and progress. Indeed, this momentum should be reinforced and advanced. The relevance of the NSP initiative is felt more today. how lucky we are to have good neighbors creatively pushing further and reaching out despite new and unprecedented demands of lockdowns and quarantines. UP is proud to contribute to transforming this good-hearted enthusiasm, the best wishes of our Korean neighbor, into real benefits for ASEAN Plus. Let me take this moment to thank in particular the Embassy of the Republic of Korea for the opportunity for experts to come together and help. Thank you for believing in our local scholars and in valuing their contribution in making this policy work for our respective countries. And thank you to the UP-KRC. UP is lucky to be the home of a KRC, helping us fulfill our mandate to be the country's regional and global university, to participate in international endeavors toward people-to-people connection, regional peace, and co-prosperity. The present may be set back by crippling problems, but kind visions and future directions, as exemplified by the NSP Plus, are reminders of the bigger, more permanent pictures of our life as a community of nations. And because of this, I have only the best wishes for this webinar. Mabuhay!
Thank you very much, President Danilo Concepcion, for your inspiring message. Now we will formally start the first session of today's event. Let me introduce today's keynote speaker, Dr. Won-gi Choi. Dr. Choi is a professor and head of Center for ASEAN-India Studies at the Korean National Diplomatic Academy, KNDA. He holds BA and MA in International Relations from Seoul National University in Korea and PhD in Political Science from University of Washington at Seattle in the United States. At KNDA has been conducting policy-oriented research on such topics as Korea's FTA policy, regional integration, and regional architecture building in East Asia, G20, and global governance, and Korea's approach towards UN climate change negotiation, among others. He was an advisory member of ROK government delegation at the UNFCCC meetings and participated in the multilateral climate change negotiations from 2010 to 2019. As head of Center for ASEAN-India Studies at KNDA, he engages in policy research on such topics as New Southern Policy, which is Korea's new foreign policy towards the Southeast Asia and beyond, and which is the topic of today's event, regional cooperation and integration in East Asia, and geopolitical dynamics and regional architecture in the Indo-Pacific. His publications include Why South Korea Wants to Tie In with ASEAN in 2019, and recent developments in India, foreign policy and implications for Korea 2019, among many others. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to talk about his presentation entitled New Southern Policy Plus, a Korean Perspective. Let us all welcome Dr. Won-gi Choi. Whenever you're ready, Dr. Choi.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Thank you very much for your full readout of my short bio. And greetings to all of you from Seoul. And thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar today. And I'm very pleased to make a presentation about Korea's New Southern Policy Plus. In my presentation, I want to first talk about the background of the NSP and its three pillars, the guiding principles of NSP, and some core policy elements. And then I'll be talking about briefly about NSP Plus, which was announced recently, about 2 weeks ago, actually, as a new implementation strategy for NSP initiative. And finally, I'd like to add a few words on the challenges and ways forward. Before getting into my presentation, the usual disclaimer applies here. I'm speaking individual capacity as a researcher, and my presentation does not represent the position of the organization that I work for, KNDA, nor the official position of MOFA Korea. All right, now first, the background of New Southern policy. I'd like to point out that in conventional Korean diplomatic practices, only the big four major countries, the US, China, Japan, and Russia, are given priorities. So other actors, partners like ASEAN, has largely remained as secondary in Seoul's foreign policy priorities. In spite of, in case of ASEAN, its growing prominence and importance to Korea. So you have some sort of anachronistic bias gap between the reality of Korea as a 10th largest economy in the world and its diplomatic orientation and practices. So with the introduction of New Southern policy, we want to change this bias and imbalances in Korean diplomatic priorities. So with NSP, you want to diversify your diplomatic and economic relations beyond the big four major countries. So I think diversification is the key word in NSP initiative. So NSP now currently stands for President Moon's signature foreign policy initiative that includes all of major policy fronts. That means diplomatic, NSP is a diplomatic, economic, social, cultural, as well as strategic kind of dimensions. It has dimensions. So as Ambassador Han already pointed out, it has been already 3 years since President Moon initiated this initiative. And looking back on the achievements and progress that we have made since the inception of New Southern policy, I think NSP is the most successful and the most active policy initiative and program in the Moon administration, as we could observe from the commemorative summit held in Busan last year. Actually, he has many other initiatives, but the other initiatives have not delivered as much as New Southern policy. That's my individual assessment. Now, the three pillars of NSP, this is so-called the three pillars. I think this is kind of the three Ps are the guiding principles of NSP initiative. I'd like to briefly touch upon on each of the three Ps. First of all, the NSP is a people-centered initiative, and you give a priority to expanding people-to-people exchanges. Here, what we mean by people-to-people exchange is not simply about the mutual visits and contacts between ASEAN and Korea. It is more about deepening and strengthening the human relations, the bilateral relationship with Korea and ASEAN at the people level. So this aspect of NSP has also strong resonance with the people-centered approach of the ASEAN community building efforts. So we aim for increasing people-to-people ties and solidarity. So if you look at the actual policy programs of NSP, you have many policy programs in the areas of cultural exchanges, education, training, the scholars programs and things like that. All of these programs are related to the concept of people-centered approach embedded in NSP. So we want to, above all, more than anything else, we want to expand and strengthen the human ties and solidarity with ASEAN. I think the philosophy behind NSP is that this is the most important thing. So with this human ties and people-to-people solidarity, you could start with other kind of corporate cooperations like in economic areas and other areas as well. I think the second principle of NSP is prosperity. It's about basically increasing and expanding trade and investment. The goal here is to expand economic exchanges and cooperation that would produce and deliver mutually beneficial economic outcomes. This is very important. We know that the Korean approach in the past was mostly commercially oriented and focused on profit-seeking activities. We are very well aware of these problems in the past, and with NSP initiative, we try to make efforts to overcome them. So under NSP, we encourage the private business to engage in economic activities that would not only meet the local demands and needs of the Southeast Asian partners, but also deliver the results locally. So the Korean government wants to play in this process as a facilitating role in creating positive incentives and making a business environment conducive for mutually beneficial economic cooperation. So many policy programs under the the prosperity pillar of NSP are designed to help and enhance the ASEAN community building efforts and to fill in the developmental gaps. The third pillar is peace, and this is about regional cooperation that would contribute to promoting peace and stability in the region. You know that ROK, Korea, is not a major power that pursues strategic goals. Rather, Korea is a middle power who has limited resources and capability. So here, the agenda we have is very modest, not so ambitious. So NSP is not I think in this respect, NSP is not a political agenda with strategic goals and ambitious intentions. By design, I think NSP does not have any hard security elements from the beginning. I think President Moon did not present NSP as Korea's new security policy. I think rather NSP is more of a Korea's regional cooperation agenda with a set of functional cooperation programs. That is, from the beginning, Seoul wants to present NSP as a functional cooperation agenda to ASEAN, not as a strategic agenda with the security policy elements. So I think in this respect, Korea wants to play the role of a benign actor with practical cooperation agenda. In fact, in Southeast Asia, Korea is not usually regarded as a political actor like other major countries like China, United States, and Japan. To many Southeast Asian people, Korea is more of a cultural phenomena, popular and familiar being with the K-dramas, K-pop songs such as BTS Dynamite, right? So well, in that regard, I think under the pillar of New Southern policy, as I pointed out before, you cannot really find a hard security agenda. The focus under the peace pillar of NSP is non-traditional security cooperation. See, we want to pursue some cooperative projects in the area of in the issues like climate change, environmental degradations. For example, the marine waste is a big problem in the Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries. And also water management in Mekong area, the wildfire management and early warning for flooding and things like this. So we want to kind of focus on these, the non-traditional security areas. Now, the core policy elements of the Southern policy. I think at least we have four discernible core policy elements. The first one is the people-to-people ties, which I already mentioned, so I skipped this item. The other three is economic diversification, diplomatic rebalancing, and promoting regional cooperation. Economic diversification. With this the NSP initiative, I think Seoul wants to realign and expand its external economic portfolios with ASEAN, because ASEAN and Southeast Asia has the most dynamically growing economies in the world. So we want to kind of realign and expand our ties in this regard. And I think we have lots of economic complementarities and ample potential in this regard. And also, NSP is a kind of economic diversification effort in that NSP is based on Korea's strategic desire to reduce vulnerabilities and dependency, especially on China. You know that we had the bitter experience of economic retaliation by China right after the deployment of the THAAD missile battery in 2016. I think this is a kind of wake-up call. And also, if you look at the activities of Korean private business operating in China, even before NSP, the economic diversification out of China has been already occurring among many Korean private business firms operating in China. According to the government, Korean government sources, at one time in the past, more than 45,000 Korean firms were operating their production facilities in China. Now, this number has been cut in half. According to the government sources, we now have about 28,000 firms operating in China. So there has been an exodus of Korean firms out of China, and they have mostly relocated to Southeast Asia. So without this NSP, I mean, the economic diversification has been already occurring. Okay, the second core policy element is, as I pointed out before, is diplomatic rebalancing. The aspiration is that you want to elevate the ASEAN as a priority partner in diplomatic kind of priorities, orientations, and practices, on a par with the big four major powers. So in this regard, NSP is a diplomatic rebalancing effort, and you want to overcome the bias embedded in conventional Korean diplomatic orientations. I think we already have some institutional changes in this regard. For example, in the headquarters of Foreign Ministry in Seoul, about 2 years ago, they created a whole brand new bureau in the headquarters of Foreign Ministry in Seoul, which is dedicated solely to dealing with ASEAN and Southeast Asian affairs. So we now have an independent Bureau of ASEAN and Southeast Asian Affairs. This is first time in Korean diplomatic kind of history. We also upgraded and expanded Korean diplomatic mission to ASEAN in Jakarta. They tripled the number of Korean diplomats stationing in the ASEAN mission in Jakarta. So the ROK ASEAN mission is now one of the largest multilateral diplomatic mission abroad, overseas. So I think these institutional reinforcements show that Korea is really serious about NSP and trying to give priority to ASEAN relations. The third element of core policy element of NSP is regional cooperation. I think NSP is also Korea's new policy for regional cooperation in the East Asia and in the wider Indo-Pacific area. In the context of increasing U.S.-China strategic competition, I think NSP is also a Korea's hedging kind of policy. So the concept of inclusiveness is central in Seoul's regional cooperation strategy, as we want an inclusive regional architecture to emerge in the Indo-Pacific region. So in this regard, Korea under NSP is in full support of ASEAN's AOIP, ASEAN Outlook in the Indo-Pacific. And I think Korea shares the same interest in this regard with ASEAN. We prefer to have some sort of open, transparent, an inclusive regional architecture based on the ASEAN-led multilateral arrangements mechanisms like EAS. So in this regard, we have a convergence. Korea has convergence of interest with ASEAN, and we try to come up with, forge some sort of a stronger cooperation with ASEAN in this regard. Now let me turn to the NS Plus. Well, NS Plus was announced 2 weeks ago by President Moon at the ASEAN ROC Summit. I think NSP Plus, this is a new implementation strategy for NSP initiative. Well, the detailed information is on the way. I think the government is trying to, is now on the preparation in order to provide detailed information about the contents of NS Plus. If you look at NS Plus, this is a composed, NS Plus is composed of a set of custom tailored policy programs reflecting the urgent need to deal with the challenges of COVID-19, as well as the shifts in the needs and the priorities of ROK-ASEAN relations. So as a brand new implementation strategy of NSP initiative, NSP Plus has designated 7 priority areas, as Ambassador Han pointed out in the beginning. And we came up with a set of clustered policy programs in each of these 7 priority areas. You know that the policy programs under NSP was originally designed way before the outbreak of the coronavirus. So we didn't have any programs related to this. So NSP Plus is designed and planned in such a way that it has a strong resonance with ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and its implementation plan. So if you look at the details of the policy programs under NSP Plus, the 7 priorities overlap with the 5 broad strategies and priorities of ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. Let me briefly touch up. I can't go into detail about the NSP Plus, but let me briefly touch upon the 7 priorities of NSP Plus. Once again, I emphasize that NSP Plus is not something, is not a replacement of the original NSP initiative. I think NSP Plus is more of the implementation strategy for NSP in the context of COVID-19 and recent changes in the environment. The first priority of NSP Plus is a public health cooperation. The most important and urgent task for now is to overcome the health crisis caused by COVID-19 for every country, right? But originally, public health cooperation was not a major component in the original NSP implementation program. So they adjusted, they coordinated, and they changed the program. So now the public health cooperation is the #1 priority in NSP Plus. Here, we aim for comprehensive health cooperation. The first priority in NSP Plus is not just about simply supplying the health equipments and supplies. This is way bigger and larger and longer than that. So first, we are going to double the size of ODA funding devoted to health cooperation program over the next 5 years. The health cooperation program is composed of very diverse and comprehensive policy measures. So this includes provision of health care supplies and equipments, but also this initiative, priority. The first priority has also the capacity building programs for educating and nurturing health professionals. We also have the item of health industry cooperation. And also we have knowledge sharing programs, consulting programs regarding the health emergency response capabilities. So the list is very, very long. So we have a very diverse set of programs for expanding and strengthening the public health cooperation. The second priority is education and human capital development program. In NSP, education is very important, and it represents the people-centeredness of NSP. So we have very diverse education programs, including the scholarship programs, the invitation of college students, teachers, and professionals in various fields from ASEAN countries, and various vocational and technical training programs as well. So we have very extensive list of programs, policy programs, and measures regarding the education and human capital development programs. So this is the second priority. The third priority is the cultural exchange. So even if people can't travel these days due to COVID-19, we are planning to utilize digital technology to create online platforms that allow virtual cultural exchanges. So these are some of the examples of the policy programs under the third priority of cultural exchanges. The fourth priority is trade and investment. So the programs under this includes various policy measures regarding the reshaping of global value chain, and also the trade liberalization efforts like bilateral FTAs and SEPA agreements, and also small and medium-sized enterprises capacity building programs and developmental assistance. So a variety of programs that try to promote trade and investment. The sixth priority is infrastructure development program. Here, we do not talk about a large-scale infrastructure development like the projects under China's BRI initiative. I think we have two sets of models in mind here. One is rural development projects based on our own experience of rural development, like a Semao Undong kind of initiative. So we want to help to develop the rural and areas in various parts of the Southeast Asia. The other is about the smart city. We have some experience of developing smart cities, and we would like to share the experience and know-hows of Korea's smart city development. And also this is closely related to the MPAC, the ASEAN Master Plan on Connectivity Program initiative. The seventh and largest priority area is, as I mentioned before, non-traditional security cooperation. Here we have some cooperation projects on the environmental issues, climate change, water management in the Mekong, biodiversity programs, marine waste management programs, and disaster management projects on regarding the wildfire and early warning systems for flooding. So as I pointed out before, I think that they will release more detailed information on NSP Plus in the near future, and it's detailed implementation programs. As a new implementation strategy to realize the goals of NSP, I hope NSP Plus would work effectively and consistently in the coming future. Now, the last part of my presentation, challenges and ways forward. First of all, I think we have strong pressure from the geopolitical tensions from the ongoing US-China strategic competition. We now have the new administration in the United States, the Biden administration. I think they will have no less hard approach on China than Trump administration. So in geostrategic respect, Korea is poised in the middle between US and China. And I guess we face greater pressure from this, which would constrain our ability to pursue NSP initiatives. And also, I think some people say that NSP is focusing on too much on economic issues, and you do not have a strong elements in strategic and security cooperation areas. I think that's true. Again, according to my own perspective, I think that is by design from the beginning. NSP is kind of aim for a functional cooperation. We do not want to pursue a strategic goals. So I think this reflects some of the limitations and constraints of Korea as a middle power. And also some of the questions, lots of people raise this question. So the question is, will the NSP survive Moon presidency? Do you expect that NSP will be remaining even after President Moon steps down? I think my answer to this question is yes. Maybe the brand name of this policy initiative might be changed later on, because in Korea, in every 5 years, you have new president and new administration, and you have all new brand names for your major policy initiatives. So this is the way politics is done in Korea because we have a single-term presidency. But I think even under a different brand name, we will continue to have NSP even after President Moon, because it is in our interest to continue. So NSP is not developed for the purpose of some altruistic perspective. I think this is also the best serves Korea's interest. So we do have some invested interest that NSP to continue. I will stop here and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Choi, for your inspiring talk. I believe right now our viewers already have questions, but we would like to request them to wait until the end of the second session. During the open forum, we'll be taking in your questions and comments. Just make sure to leave them in the YouTube chat box as we move along the program. We will make sure to take note of them for discussion later during the open forum. At this point, we are honored to have our esteemed discussants to share their reactions, thoughts, and perspectives on the topics presented by Dr. Che. Our first discussant is Professor Victor Andres C. Manhit. He is the founder and managing director of the Strat-based Group and president of its policy think tank, Albert Del Rosario Institute for Strategic International Studies, or ADRI. Concurrently, he is the Philippine country head of the renowned Bauer Group Asia, a strategic advisory firm that specializes in the Asia Pacific. He was a former chair and retired associate professor of the Political Science Department of De La Salle University. Professor Manhit has authored numerous commentaries and papers on geopolitical issues, governance, and political reforms. He obtained his master's degree in public administration and bachelor's degree in Philippine studies from the University of the Philippines. He was also appointed as one of the ASEAN Regional Forum experts and eminent persons by the Department of Foreign Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, our first discussant, Professor Dindo Manhit.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. Thank you for the invitation from the Korean Embassy, the UP Korean Center, and I appreciate this opportunity to give my views with regards to the NSP Plus. Allow me to share my screen. When I heard of the new Southern Policy Plus, I tried to recall the latest remarks I got from President Moon, and I remember coming across it November 12, 2020. And I want to start my presentation from this point of view. that the impact of COVID-19 varies from country to country, and no country can let its guard down. And when President Moon spoke of a strategy that we will be able to take the lead in the post-COVID-19 era and realize a vision of a people-centered community of peace and prosperity faster, I wanted to use this as a takeoff point, because it reminded me of the three pillars of the new Southern policy that I took note of last year in a couple of visits and discussions with KNDA. And I feel it remains relevant and timely given the continuing impact of COVID-19. The shifts economically and politically that have drastically altered the field calls for middle powers like Korea to shape where the next trends are headed. And this Republic of Korea's regional policy direction, built on the interest and welfare of the people, driven by the goal of economic prosperity through mutually beneficial long-term gains and towards strategic cooperation for regional peace and stability through diplomatic rebalancing, is so appropriate for our time. That when you look at regional recovery, listening to Dr. Wong Jing, reading through the NSP Plus strategy, it addresses the challenge of the region, and more so the Philippines. When I read through the NSP Plus strategy, I take note of health and medical cooperation, education and human resource development, cultural exchanges, mutually beneficial trade relations and investments, infrastructure, from rural, farming, and urban, even future industries cooperation, even on issues of non-conventional security cooperation. This expansion to this strategy is so appropriate to the challenge that the country is facing right now. In Strat-based ADR Institute, we have been tracking through our research and intelligence team what we call 8 pandemic risks. True, there is this nature of creative destruction, but you can turn risk into opportunity. And I would like to take note of a commentary that I wrote on the eve of the 5th State of the Nation address of the President, where I spoke of public health and economy in the balance. I wrote that managing the crisis at the national level depends on the country's capacity to respond and control the virus. Until such time a cure or a vaccine has been developed, we need to plan and strategize on how to cope with this new normal. And then, until now, I keep on arguing for the need to work in unison with different stakeholders. And what I mean by stakeholders, I'm not only referring to the Philippines, private sector, public sector, civil society, the academy, but even neighbors within the region. And in our September policy brief, I wrote that to bounce back more quickly, the country needs to recalibrate its growth trajectory by veering away from its long reliance on traditional growth drivers, especially consumer spending. It is time for the Philippine government to redesign its core strategy and develop effective policies for long-term and inclusive economic recovery and growth by taking focus on stable foreign investors. And when I was writing this policy brief, one of the policies that I had in mind was a new Southern policy, without realizing there will be a new Southern policy plus. Because I've argued that as government needs to calibrate the national strategy for recovery, or this need for an investment-driven growth, it is imperative to enhance the Philippines' potential role in an increasingly changing global supply chain and benefit from the manufacturing exodus from China. Our situation presents itself as an opportunity for the Philippines to attract the right foreign investors. I believe the country has a competitive advantage in terms of its strategic location, a young and skilled workforce, especially in manufacturing, that can really strengthen our role in the global supply chain. I've seen through my engagement with our own Department of Trade and Industry how investors in our own special economic zones played an important role during, especially the lockdown since March, of ensuring that the supply chain will not affect critical industries. I took note of some ICT or information technology corporations that had some of its components being built in different economic zones in the Philippines. That means we can produce more exports than imports that can lead to trade surpluses. And this is what I speak of with regard to calibrating the national strategy for recovery. I take note of all these companies currently in the Philippine special economic zones. Of course, government need to supplement this further by easing the cost of doing business, as the current pandemic accelerates technological change through automation. We need the Philippines to transform digitally to become globally competitive. While there are numerous factors that hinder the country from swiftly recovering, most of which are political in nature, private enterprises, both domestic and more so foreign enterprises, can take the lead and show the directional focus for a more sustainable economic growth in the Philippines. While I take note of this, I continue to emphasize also the importance of a friend like the Republic of Korea plays within the regional security environment. In Strat-based ADR Institute, we have tried to track these issues along the traditional security challenges, or even now, especially with this pandemic, non-traditional security environment, and even evolving security challenges. As we track this, I wanted to share what we wrote in our November policy brief. And this is where I believe role of the Republic of Korea within the Philippines, within the region, can play a role. Whereby middle power countries should realize that even if the United States' presence in the Indo-Pacific is crucial to ensure a rule-based order, our region's future should not be dictated by or chartered under a unipolar hegemony. As the region's political landscape continues to evolve, there's a crucial need for the middle powers to recognize their role and the importance of creating a network of like-minded states built on the shared values of democracy, built on the belief of a rule-based order to protect and maintain an open and multipolar Indo-Pacific region. That's why I speak here of maximizing minilateralism. I see opportunities in the convergence of interests between the Philippines and the Republic of Korea's NSP Plus strategy. The region's ability to function within a broader global system, despite difference in culture and varying levels of development, is evident that despite growing uncertainties and disruptions, the Indo-Pacific has the ability to thrive and shape the regional order in line with its own interests. The convergence of Indo-Pacific strategies and common interests emphasizes that through collective leadership, middle powers could maximize its role amidst a changing geopolitical environment. And a stronger Philippines-Republic of Korea relations beyond this US-China strategic competition, beyond COVID-19, is what we all need. In the broader regional context, from an ASEAN lens, particularly the Philippines, possesses relative to the US, China, and other middle power highlights its non-threatening posture and its capacity to navigate through the hierarchical nature of global affairs. Beyond great power politicking and COVID-19, well-established relations between the Philippines and South Korea across political, sociocultural, and economic engagements provide various platforms and opportunities to enable new areas for cooperation to sustain and elevate existing mechanisms. I want to end with a line from a commentary that I wrote with the Philippine Daily Inquirer 2 weeks back, 2 Fridays back, if I remember it right. The current global disorder, with the rise of evolving security threats in both traditional and non-traditional spaces, demands that the region utilize effective multilateral collaborations among strategic partners and allies. And here I refer to the Republic of Korea and the ASEAN, Republic of Korea, and the Republic of the Philippines. Again, good morning and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Professor Manhit, for your very interesting discussion. We now call on our second discussant to reflect on the new Southern Policy Plus as presented by Dr. Choi earlier, Dr. Aaron J. Rabena. Dr. Rabena is Research Fellow at the Asia Pacific Pathways to Progress, consultant at Caucus Incorporated, and a member of the Philippine Council for Foreign Relations. He served as Senior Lecturer at the Asian Center in UP and Visiting Fellow at the China Institute of International Studies and China Foreign Affairs University. He's also a Pacific Forum Young Leader and is also an alumnus of the East-West Center and the U.S. Department's International Visitor Leadership Program. He got his PhD in International Relations from Shandong University in China. His areas of interest include strategic studies, East Asian geopolitics and multilateral politics, political risk in Chinese politics and foreign policy. He was selected as one of the ASEAN Korea Next Generation Policy Experts of the Korea Foundation in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jed Rabena. Dr. Rabena?
Can you hear me, Sir Aldrin?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, here. So, firstly, thank you, Sir Aldrin, for the introduction. Ambassador Han Dongman, Dr. Wong Gi Cho, to my co-panelists, Professor Dindo Manhit and Professor Michelle Palumbarit. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So, firstly, I want to thank the ROK Embassy and the University of the Philippines Korea Research Center for this invitation. It's always a delight to take part in Korea-related activities and events. So for this morning, I'd like to talk about the gains and prospects of Korea's New Southern Policy in the Philippines, and also in relation to the presentation of Professor Cho about the NSP Plus. So I'd start by, number one, I'd discuss the state of the NSP in the Philippines in terms of the prosperity aspect. Second is the NSP in the Philippines in terms of security. And third, the NSP in the Philippines in terms of the sociocultural dimension. And fourth would be some policy prescriptions as to how the NSP Plus can further the Philippines' development and economic agenda. So just some background. We can notice the impact of the NSP in the Philippines, given the frequency and the interaction in terms of the interaction at the highest levels. For example, in 2017, President Moon met with President Duterte. 2018, they met in Seoul. 2019, again in Busan. So we go to the first aspect of the NSP in terms of prosperity. What has happened here? In 2017, I used 2017 here as the benchmark because I believe the NSP was announced in 2017. So by looking at the year 2018 and 2019, we can see the progress or what has been achieved. So in terms of 2017, our trade with South Korea was at $13 billion. They were our fourth largest trade partner, fifth largest export market, and fourth largest import source. In 2018, the trade volume was still at 13 billion. South Korea was again our fourth largest trade partner. This time they became the sixth largest export market and second largest import source. But come 2019, slightly the trade volume slightly declined to 11.7 billion dollars. South Korea became the fifth largest trade partner and sixth largest export market and third largest import source. So in terms of investments, I'm referring to actual investments here. South Korea was the 11th largest in 2017, and they became the ninth largest. So we see the progress here. They became the ninth largest in 2018. And 2019, they became the third largest investment source, $142 million. As to ODA, in 2017, South Korea was the sixth largest. In 2018, they became the fifth largest. And in 2019, they became the fourth largest ODA source, $630 million. So I guess we can attribute this to the Moon government's priority, that the kind of priority that they attach to the NSP. And at the same time, we have to keep in mind that the bilateral FTA between the Philippines and Korea is still in the works. Probably by next year, it will already be finalized. And so this will certainly prop up the bilateral trade between the Philippines and South Korea. And also, notably, recently, our RCEP has just been signed. So this would also, I guess, impact the trade between the two countries. So in terms of security, I guess just some trivia here. Yeah, we all know that the Philippines sent troops to help South Korea, defend itself against North Korea. And it's actually in the Korean War where the Philippines had an indirect battle against Chinese troops. And it is in the Battle of Yultong, actually, where the Philippines were able to defeat the Chinese. So in relation to this, given that historically Philippines-Korea relationship is one of blood alliance, so we can see that we can consider South Korea therefore as a traditional security partner or capacity builder. I think even before the New Southern Policy was announced, South Korea was already looking south because it was already helping beef up the Philippines' defense capabilities. So we see this in the acquisition of fighter jets, and we'll also see this in the procurement of multi-role guided missile frigates. And I think the Philippines plans to get 2 more from South Korea. So South Korea also donated a Pohang-class corvette, and it is believed that 2 more will be coming. So this is really, the generosity of South Korea in this regard is really very appreciated in the Philippines. And more recently, in terms of mil-to-mil ties, Philippines and South Korean navies discussed COVID-19 cooperation virtually. And the Department of National Defense of the Philippines also plans to get surplus choppers from South Korea. So we can see that the security ties between the Philippines and South Korea are really continues to deepen. And in terms of people, I believe tourist spots in the Philippines are favorites of South Koreans. For example, in 2017, we can see here, the year the NSP was announced, South Korean visitors to the Philippines was figured at 1.6 million. 2018, they're still number one source, 1.5, slightly declined. But then 2019, it became 1.9 million. So still number one. And as a positive for many Filipinos, especially for those fans of um, K-pop and K-drama, so South Korea decided to relax visa requirements for Filipinos. And this would certainly entice more Filipinos to go to South Korea for tourism, for studies, and among other things. And we have also seen the launching of the Philippine-South Korea Society. So this is a good platform for promoting business and people-to-people relations between the two countries. So as to my policy considerations in light of the announcement of the NSP, I think that in addition to supporting the Duterte government's Build program, the ROK should also target the Philippines Investment Priorities Plan, because as the name says, this is the investment priorities of the government. And I think that this is what we badly need right now, climate resilient infrastructure, considering that the Philippines is situated in the Pacific Ring of Fire. You can see the devastation that was brought about by Typhoon Rolly and Ulysses here in our country. We need to fix our infrastructure. So we need help from foreign friends. And South Korea, I think, should also engage in the sub-regional grouping of BIMP-IAGA. It's like the Mekong version of the Mekong. It's like the Mekong region counterpart of maritime ASEAN, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines. And one of the plans of BIMP-IAGA is to have this ASEAN Ro-Ro shipping network. But of course, it's not that easy because certain areas of BIMP-IAGA are prone to security threats like terrorism, piracy. So this is also where I think South Korea can help in terms of the peace aspect of the NSP. There can be bilateral maritime patrols in the Sulu Sea. This has already been done by the Philippines with Malaysia and Indonesia. So why not South Korea? President Duterte even mentioned that it can be done with Japan and China. So why not South Korea? So if this is with this, I think South Korea can be seen as a public goods provider in maritime Southeast Asia. And I also think that there can be a regularized military exercises, for example, in counterterrorism between the Philippines and South Korea. Similarly, I think there can also be Coast Guard exercises between the Philippines and South Korea. And for the people aspect, I think it's important to deepen think tank and university diplomacy. For example, research collaboration, joint publications. I, for one, would love to do projects with Professor Cho in the future. So I think it's important to intensify think tank interactions and joint activities and visiting fellowships as well, so that Filipinos can be exposed to South Korea's strategic political culture, and South Koreans can also be exposed to Philippine political and strategic culture. So as for others, not related to peace, people, and prosperity, so this was already mentioned, the health pillar. This is similar to China's Belt and Road Initiative. They have the Health Silk Road. And I think we should do more than just vaccines and mask diplomacy, because in the Philippines, COVID-19 showed that there are few Filipinos who were trained in qPCR machines, medical technology, applied molecular biology, and molecular medicine. So we need trainings. And I think South Korea as a developed country can really help us on this. So second, I think it's high time that really the Philippines and South Korea lift the bilateral ties to strategic partnership, just as it has done with Indonesia and Vietnam. So we need to connect the partnerships in the region. I think this is just for consideration. There can be new mechanisms like 2+2 meetings. We have 2+2 meetings with the United States, and I think also with Japan. So, and there can also be a website for the NSP Plus, China's Belt and Road Initiative. They have a website for the BRI. That's where all the activities are published. And if not websites, if not a website, there can also be the annual publication of reports in relation to the NSP. This is what the United States State Department does, and the Department of Defense. They publish annual reports about the Indo-Pacific. And I think lastly, ROK and ASEAN countries regional strategies, I believe, must be coordinated. And in relation to that, I think small and middle powers should be strategic and geopolitical agents. During the Cold War, we have seen, the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. There was the non-aligned movement, the global South countries in particular, where they banded together to reject imperialism and colonialism. I think this time, given what some people say new Cold War, you can call it semi-Cold War, strategic rivalry between the United States and China, there can be an aligned network of third-party states, meaning a network of small and middle powers. This was already done. When the United States opted out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Japanese Prime Minister Abe stepped up and revived the CPTPP. So it shows that things can be done even without the United States. So there can also be the coordination of the NSP with India's Act East policy, Indonesia's global maritime fulcrum, the free and open Indo-Pacific strategies of Japan and Australia. So I will end my presentation there, and thank you all for listening. Kamsahamnida.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jed Rabena, for providing us, a brief explainer of NSP's impact on the Philippines, as well as your policy recommendations in relation to the new NSP Plus, as discussed earlier by Dr. Chue. We now call on our third and last discussant for this session, Dr. Michelle Palumbarit. Dr. Palumbarit obtained her doctoral degree in political science from Yonsei University, Seoul in 2016, and her master's degree in Korean studies in 2012 from the same university. Prior to her graduate studies in Korea, Professor Palumbarit studied at the Asian Center, UP Diliman, with Korea as her country of specialization. She's currently teaching courses on Korea at her alma mater, the Asian Center at UP. She's also currently the editor-in-chief of Mushawara, the official newsletter of the Asian Center, and the assistant to the Dean for Research and Publications. Her research interests include Korea studies, ASEAN and Korea relations, Filipino migrants in Korea, and environmental politics. Ladies and gentlemen, our last discussant for this session, Dr. Michelle Rubido Palumbarit.
Yes. Thank you very much, Aldrin, and good morning, everyone. When I think of NSP, or the North-South, the New South policy of Korea, I think of it as Korea's initiative of knowing the ASEAN region and ASEAN peoples on a deeper level. So as we know, President Moon's NSP Plus centers on the 3 Ps: people, prosperity, and peace. But of the 3, I'm going to focus on the people aspect, particularly policy task numbers 2 and 6, which tackles cultural exchanges, rural development, and environment. So the first one is policy task number 2, expanding two-way cultural exchanges with NSP target countries. The policy states that we will promote two-way cultural exchanges by increasing the number of bases for cultural exchanges in the NSP target countries, implementing cultural ODA projects, and spreading ASEAN cultures and relevant language contents. To me, here lies some gray areas here. The first of which really is the concept of cultural ODA. This is a very interesting concept, as this can be President Moon's unique mark, like Lee Myung-pak's green growth versus brown growth. This can be a new approach in reaching out to peoples of ASEAN. But what does this concept really mean, cultural ODA? Does it mean development assistance to promote Korean culture to Southeast Asia and Southeast Asian culture to Koreans? And if so, which particular cultural projects does this policy refer to? Another gray area that I've seen in the NSP is on the point of promoting Korean people's awareness and understanding Asian cultures. How can this be concretely carried out and achieved? In a study by ASEAN Korea Center on Korea's perception towards ASEAN in 2018, I believe, revealed limited and very stereotyped image of ASEAN region, Asian peoples as generally foreign workers and marriage migrants in Korea. So perceptions such as this are really hard to change. Practically, increase in tourism is a logical approach, but I believe a deeper understanding of ASEAN on the part of Koreans is needed. Perhaps it is high time in Korea's higher education to introduce or establish Southeast Asian studies, particularly in major universities in Korea, because it takes into consideration the socio-political and cultural aspects of ASEAN countries. As to policy task number 2, improving the quality of life of NSP target countries, the policy aims at improving the living standards of residents in rural communities by supporting rural development, such as Semaul Undong. We all know that Semaul Undong is a popular rural development project. It is well known globally, actually. But in the case of the Philippines, I observed that Semaul really has not made a huge impression in the country, even though it was introduced in the country in the 1990s. I understand that it is generally focused on short-term livelihood projects. They are important, but to me, what is equally important is that Semaul should also focus on socio-culturally empowering the village leaders and the people through capacity training workshops like what Park did in the 1970s. And another point is on enhancing capacity for addressing environmental and health challenges. I'll focus on environmental challenges. Looking into the NSP policy, what comes to mind in this aspect to me is the environmental aid, or the so-called green ODA, started by Im Young-pak in 2008 with a specific focus on climate change-related development finance of Korea. In my study, when I compared Korea's projects on climate change-related development finance of former President Im Young-pak, Park Geun-hye, and now President Moon, Lim Young-pak had initiated many projects in the Philippines, green projects in the Philippines, particularly because it was his project, the green growth versus brown growth and the environmental ODA. However, his projects were on a general environmental protection, while Park and his are on agriculture and fishing. Meanwhile, I've seen that President Moon focused on disaster risk management, risk reduction, and environmental education and training. So of the three, to me, Moon's approach is very timely responsive and has a huge potential to contribute to further to environmental protection and care. Okay, so for me, the bottom line of all this is that if these issues are really taken seriously, President Moon's NSP has a huge potential to effect positive change in many aspects of ASEAN-Philippine-Korea relations. Deeper cultural exchanges, genuine rural development, and focused environmental ODA, particularly on environmental education and training. NSP, I believe, can leave lasting and meaningful impact on the lives of the people, even after President Moon's term concludes in 2022. It is because his policy, his NSP policy, goes beyond high-level meetings. For me, it is a policy that touches on the very needs of the so-called common man. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and good morning again to everyone. Back to you, Aldrin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Palumbari, for your insightful discussion. We would like to thank again the panel for sharing your valuable analysis, Professor Manhit, Dr. Rabena, and Dr. Palumbari, and of course, Dr. Choi for his keynote speech earlier. Now, before we move to the next session, we'll take in two questions. We have around 5 minutes to tackle these two questions. So perhaps I'd like to call probably first Dr. Che to respond to the first question because this is some sort of, assessment or evaluation aspect of NSP. The question is, are there any concrete key performance indicators that have been put in place to measure the progress of the NSP and its present iterations? Dr. Choi, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I'm not directly involved in the checking the performance and progress of NSP, but to my knowledge, the Presidential Committee on NSP has their own assessment system. You know that the NSP encompasses whole variety of policies in whole different areas. So this is not just the Ministry of Foreign Affairs issue. This is, major ministries and government public agencies are involved in their own special areas. So this is a whole of government effort, and different agencies and different ministries pursue different programs, and some programs overlap. For example, in the rural development, right? So the COICA, the Foreign Aid Agency of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they do have some programs similar to Semal Undong in rural development, but also Ministry of Agriculture pursues their own problem, so the projects. So you have some overlaps. So the Presidential Committee tried to streamline the overlaps and the overlap. So they try to kind of provide some sort of efficient streamlining of the programs. And they do have some annual kind of assessment programs. But I don't think that they have very stringent, strong one. But they do care about the performance of the NSP because this is most successful, providing political capital to the president. So this is very important. So they do care. So we do have some.
Thank you for that response, Dr. Choi. Just a quick follow-up. So are these annual reports available for public viewing or for public downloading? Are there documents available in English that Filipino scholars could actually check online containing reports about the performance of the various government agencies with regard to the implementation of the NSP?
I'm not quite sure whether they have a report in English, but I do believe that they have the reports in Korean. But I don't know whether they have translated version. So
All right.
I'll have to check about that.
Thank you so much. Now, we move to the second question. This one will open to everyone, including our three discussants earlier. Anyone who would like to respond to this question. Despite high levels of economic ties and people-to-people exchanges, why is that Korea's relations with Southeast Asia and India receive disproportionately less recognition both within Korea's foreign policy hierarchy and in the public's view? Of course, you may refute the claim made in this question, but anybody who would like to respond to this question?
Well,
yes, Professor Manhit. Yes, Dindo.
I think especially with the Philippine experience, we have to take note of the people-to-people evolution of relations this past few decades, and even the growing, as I said, economic investments that we are seeing in the Philippines, and now even on a security level. So I tend to disagree, maybe with other ASEAN countries, but with the Philippines, we see it growing, even in our own culture, the way we appreciate K-pop or even Korean TV. But more than that is really as we grow and realize the opportunities we get from the investment coming from Korean companies investing, creating jobs and livelihood, that will really strengthen our relationship with Korea. That's why I see really an opportunity with an NSP plus moving forward. And if it can only focus more really on key issues that is really confronting the Philippines, that as we try to recover from this pandemic, there's really a need to create more opportunities that will address rising unemployment, underemployment, and more investment from Korea as they move out of China with their new southern, or as they move to ASEAN. Hopefully, we can get a piece of that investment that will really strengthen the relationship between us and the Republic of Korea.
All right. Anybody else who would like to make some brief response to any of these two questions from the panel? Okay, I guess we have gotten enough answers. Thank you very much for your responses, Dr. Chue and Professor Manhit. And we would like to thank again everyone, Dr. Chue for your keynote speech, and to our three discussants, Professor Dindo Manhit, Dr. Jed Robena, and Dr. Michelle Palumbarit. For our audience who still have questions or would like to ask questions, or who have comments and reactions to our earlier discussions, please don't forget to leave your question in the YouTube chat box. Now I will pass the moderator seat to Professor Raisa Lumampao, who will lead the second session. Raisa?
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. Welcome to the second session, everyone. I'm Raisa, and I will be your moderator for the second session. In this session, we will listen to 5 panel members and their thoughts on the different strategies or policy areas of the NSP Plus. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel members for the second session. Our first panelist is Dr. Andrew Yo. He is Professor of Politics and Director of the Asian Studies at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. Dr. Yo is currently based in Manila as a visiting research scholar at the University of the Philippines in Diliman. He teaches courses on international relations theory, East Asian regionalism, and Korean politics, among others. Our second panelist is Assistant Professor Frances Antoinette Cruz of the College of Arts and Letters in UP, and the co-convener of the Decolonial Studies program at the UP Center for Integrative and Development Studies. Assistant Professor Cruz is the current president of the Philippine International Studies Organization. We also have with us this morning Professor Mark Salvador Isla. He's a faculty member of the Department of International Studies and currently the Associate Dean of the Institute of Arts and Sciences at the Far Eastern University. Professor Isla teaches courses on international and regional organizations, government and politics of East Asia, and international relations. We are fortunate to have with us this morning 2 panelists zooming from Seoul. We are joined by Dr. Eunhee of the Asia Center of the Seoul National University. Dr. is a geographer specializing in Southeast Asian studies. She currently leads a research team for studying emerging markets in Southeast Asia at SNU, and she serves as a national secretariat of the Future Earth Korea Committee. Our last panelist is Dr. Jung-Gun Kim. He is the head of the South Asia team of the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. Prior to that, Dr. Kim served in the Trade and Investment Policy Division and the Asia Pacific Research at KIEP. He has also previously worked with the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Program, or QUATRA. So our discussion for the second session will cover the strategic initiatives or priority areas of the NSP Plus, and our panelists can share with us prospects and recommendations. So to start off, and this question is addressed to all 5 panelists, how do you think NSP Plus's strategic initiatives or policy areas will strengthen or contribute to the NSP's 3 pillars: peace, prosperity, and people? Anybody can start the discussion. Perhaps we can have Dr. Jung-Gun Kim.
Yes. Hello.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I think first, in terms of economic perspective, traditionally Korea has strong economic ties with United States, Japan, China, and Europe. And since 2000, during 2000, Korea's trade with United States and Japan gradually decreased, and China became Korea's largest trading partner, and ASEAN emerged as Korea's new market and production base. And since 2000, Korea actively signed the FTA, and Korea has signed FTAs with the United States, China, and EU, ASEAN and individual ASEAN countries, and India. So to sum up, it is safe to say that Korea's trade policy from the traditional Korean trade policy is focused upon expanding overseas market from the viewpoint of Korea. However, there has been a growing perception that Korea has limitations in carrying out foreign economic policies. The WTO system has faced a crisis, and there is a perception in Korea that Korea needs to look for deeper economic ties surpassing conventional forms of FTAs. So the need for Korea's foreign economic policies take a new step has increased. So in this regard, the NSP is Korea's new regional policy. It aims to seek a new level of relationship with ASEAN and India, which has high potential for mutual cooperation. And so the NSP has three major orientations, as you know, 3 Ps: prosperity, people, and peace. And those 3 Ps highlight comprehensive and reciprocal partnership with ASEAN and India. So in my opinion, economic ties should be interpreted in such a comprehensive vision. So NSP has, in other words, NSP has a long-term vision of Korea moving away from a one-way perspective and creating a reciprocal economic relationship with ASEAN and India. So let me add why I stress this mutual relationship or reciprocal relationship. Despite the previous one, I just call it previous NSP, despite the philosophy of co-prosperity, it has been pointed out that both in Korea and abroad, ASEAN and India, that Korea's perspective is still somewhat centered upon Korea's viewpoint. There were also some opinions that the policy framework of NSP was not so well defined. So in this regard, Korean government tried to improve NSP, and more importantly, the global environment has been changing dramatically. And so not only it is clear that global trade order is changing, but it is also expected that the COVID-19 will have a profound impact on world politics, economy, and society. So again, this backdrop, mutually beneficial relationship is more important for Korea's policy makers, also for NSP countries. So this is the background of the NSP Plus and why we have to focus on the new nature of NSP. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kim. Do you want to add to that, Dr. Yo?
Sure, I'll try to be brief, but in terms of the question of how does the NSP Plus enhance the 3 pillars, I would just say with the prosperity and the people pillar, just continue what they were doing before, because I think we were moving in an upward trajectory in terms of investments and trade initiatives. Of course, COVID-19 has probably put a big dip into any volume of investment and trade that's possible. But before COVID-19, I think Korea-ASEAN relations were moving in the right direction. Same with the people pillar. But the one area, of course, that I'm going to harp on again is is the peace pillar. So excuse me, prosperity and people pillars. I think you can move forward as it happened since 2017. But I think there's more expectation that that in an NSP plus or in an NSP 2.0 that there will be more. There will be a bigger push on the strategic front, but as Dr. Chen and others have pointed out, the focus still seems to be on functional areas. Of course, on non-traditional security, I think the focus on public health is a really important one. And this is something that I would just praise the South Korean government for doing, seeing the situation on the ground change with the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, public health has been the biggest issue. And so at least on that front, on non-traditional security issues, we can see a path moving forward for the peace pillar for South Korea, ASEAN, and as well as South Korea, Philippine cooperation. So I definitely expect to see more developments in that area.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from our speakers on, yes, Professor Isla, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think it's important to note that NSP Plus was not created out of nothing. So the policy was created out of a 30-year partnership and strong ties between Korea and the 10 ASEAN member states. So NSP Plus will further amplify the actions that needs to be done to maintain the dynamic strategic partnership between ASEAN and Korea. Korea, as a middle power, knows its position in the region, as mentioned by our previous speakers. It surely will not pose a competition among major powers like China and Japan, but it can certainly connect with ASEAN countries without any reservation from the 10 member states. So in order to optimize the relations between the member states of ASEAN and possibly India, Korea should focus its attention to the details of its action plan from the 2021 to 2025, using its own advantage, perhaps its knowledge in infrastructure, technology, so on and so forth. So I think in that regard, NSP Plus would be able to further strengthen and contribute to the principles of peace, prosperity, and people. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Yes, may we hear from you also? Ma'am, please turn on your audio.
Sorry about that. Yeah, magandang umaga po, everybody. I'm Eunyi, working for Seoul National University Asia Center. I prepared the two things to speak for today. One is the big or the overall, and the one is a little bit small. But yeah. Firstly, I want to mention about the NSP Plus. Frankly speaking, the official document, policy document on NSP Plus did not open to the public even in Korea. So I could not look closer on the details of the 7 initiatives except the main titles. But in my thought, the specific contents and the implementation project of NSP Plus are, of course, important, but there are other points I consider important. Korea's NSP or NSP Plus policy should be continued without stopping or major changes in the next government, because from the next year in Korea, important the elections are scheduled one after another. Of course, despite a year and around 6 months are away for the presidential elections, but I just imagined is it possible to possibility of the presidential power changes occurred in the next elections. But even so, I hope the NSP or NSP Plus will be continued without major changes, because I think this kind of the Korea and ASEAN, or the Korean and the Philippine relationship. Up to now, is it the progressing? I think that our relationship is on the way for the progress. So it's kind of the how do I say, sir? So in my role, as the regional expert, I will make more effort to that important diplomatic efforts such as the NSP are not neglected due to the domestic political events here in Korea. So it is my duty, I think. So, and then I will go back to today's topics. Actually, I prepared the cultural exchange. I prepared the comments on the cultural exchange. So Hallyu, cultural exchange and Hallyu. So I would like to talk the global popularity of Hallyu. Hallyu cannot be explained only by the superiority of the Korean cultural industry. The acceptance of the local community and the voluntary participation of fans laws are quite important. In other words, Hallyu is not an achievement only in Korean industry, but a result that has been made with the ASEAN audience together. In particular, I believe that the Filipinos having good English language skills, so Philippines has contributed greatly to the global spread of the Korean neighbor. So I think that the 아기상어, baby shark is the great examples. I heard that this song was able to spread thanks to the Filipino overseas workers who works around the world in the child care. But this information is still not well known in Korean society. So I will try to make it that our peoples will get to know as soon as I get the chance. And finally, one more thing. In terms of cultural exchange, I would like to make a special mention on the publication of a translation book by Professor Baek Young-min, who recently organized this seminar. Firstly, the congratulations to Professor Baek, and the title is in Korea. 나는 나로 살기로 했다. Maybe in English, I decided to live as myself or me. Anyway, yeah. Because my job is researcher, I believe that book are still important to cultural media for distributing knowledge and information. How about the situation book market in the Philippines? Whenever I go to the Philippines, I try to visit the bookstores, but I feel that the publishing industry is quite poor. Social science books I needed as a researcher can only be obtained in press office of UP or the Ateneo University. How about the popular books? When I visited general bookstores, for example, national bookstores, to be honestly, it's quite disappointing. It seems that this place is actually the stationery, not bookstore. So in this regard, I hope the publication of Professor Baek's translation will be an important opportunity for new cultural exchange between Korean and Philippines. Actually, the book in Korea also, the young peoples, the 20 to 30, especially young women, love these books. So I know in the Philippine book market quite lacks this kind of book areas. So I hope that Professor Baek and UPKRC will continue to introduce Korean literatures and essays to the Philippine society. For them, I think it's a good idea to promote the translation course, the specialized in Korean books at UPKRC level. How do you think about these ideas? And of course, the considering the mutuality of cultural exchange, I hope to read books that could show the current Philippine society situation, or hope real livelihood in the both countries of the Philippines and the book in near futures. Yeah, this is the end of the panel discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ong. Okay, that's something that has to be taken note of by the UP Press, probably, and the UP Korea Research Center. Okay, having mentioned cultural and education exchanges, how do you think, and this question is again addressed to everyone in the panel, how do you think academic and cultural exchanges can reduce or eliminate public perception between Koreans and ASEAN nationals due to economic disparities? Is there a way for cultural and economic exchanges to address this? Yeah, please go ahead, Professor Cruz.
I just want to draw on a point that was made earlier by Dr. Eoman related to this particular issue. What I like about the NSP Plus is that it gives structure to the SP, that it's no longer something that can be vague and ambiguous, like people and prosperity, because of course, when you say people and prosperity, you ask, how do we get there? What are the policy actions that have to be taken? And I do believe that all of the new 7 points are quite related. And of course, this includes policies that will later on improve public perception. For example, I do think that one of the great disparities between Korean education, perhaps, or the educational setting of Korea and the Philippines is, of course, connectivity. And now that we are in the situation of a pandemic, and everything is online in the Philippines, and we know that we don't have very good telecommunication structure, I do think this is an area where South Korea can come in, show best practices, develop telecommunications infrastructure, and also digital literacy, because I do think in terms of culture, this is a way to move forward in the era of fake news, in the era where everyone's on social media. I do think this is a productive and relevant area of educational and policy concentration that can possibly be looked at. This is also related, I think, to many other facets of development, because I think one of the basis of public perception is really inequality, and that is in the SDGs. So if there's any way we can go forward with the NSPs, I do think that they have to align with some of the sustainable development goals of the UN, because they have benchmarks. So earlier we mentioned KPIs, and I think that that is in general an issue with the NSP. So last year I was in Malaysia, and we had a bit of talks about the new Southern policy. And one of the things was, and this was mentioned earlier, was benchmarks. We need continuity, because of course, the Philippines, or any other developing country for that matter, does not have a say in whether or not this gets to be continued. That's on the onus of the South Korean government. And if you do continue the NSP, what are the benchmarks? How do you know that you have been improving? And I think one way, if there is a reluctance to assert benchmarks because of domestic politics or whatsoever, or because maybe of some kind of difficulty or ASEAN way or whatever it is, I do think that it's good to kind of link them to SDGs, because then at least there will be some kind of measurement as to whether or not we're achieving anything, whether or not there is continuity, whether or not this policy, these set of policies are going anywhere. I also hope that moving forward, and I think that these cultural perceptions take a long time to change, because they're based on economic inequalities and realities, right? And if you look at things like green growth, and I hope that this initiative continues despite it coming from earlier administrations, because it's linked to COVID. I really think that all these problems are linked, that you have COVID because of intrusions into wildlife. If you protect wildlife and if you ensure food security in a sustainable manner, this will have an impact on health. So planetary health, I think, is a great sort of niche diplomacy thing that can work. It will also help, I think, in terms of tourism. So there are ecotourism, perhaps policy matters that can be addressed by that. That will help, I think, improving and helping us understand cultural relations, right? And understanding where each country is coming from, because you get to see firsthand environmental diversity and also the destruction that comes with excessive industry and the lack of monitoring in that regard. So I do think that public perception can be changed slowly, but it can't be changed within one administration. I think it's linked to all the other policies present in the NSP and how you can tie them up to sustainable development goals. Yeah.
All right. Professor Isla, yes, please. About your sound. Sir, can you unmute, please?
Yes.
Okay.
Honestly, the question is a tough one to answer because, but with your indulgence, please allow me to share some of my observations. So first, there are many existing academic and cultural exchanges between ASEAN and Korea. Second, many ASEAN students or even government officials benefited from several exchange programs. Third, Korea maintains a good, favorable image of, favorable image in ASEAN, and thanks to the Korean Wave or Hallyu. So in Korea, there's ASEAN Korea Center, and the organization has implemented several programs that helps in enhancing ASEAN awareness. And this caters to young and older generations of Koreans. But we're no longer talking about an awareness. We're talking about how do we deepen understanding, okay? So the first one, I think, is number one, further enhance the network of ASEAN students who studied in Korea, and create regular programs for them. And I understand that some Korean embassies are already starting this kind of program for those who studied in Korea. But as mentioned by previous speakers, there should be consistency in this regard. Second, there should be more young generations of Koreans that will have cultural exchanges in ASEAN. They should be encouraged to, have um, maybe one semester exchange in Southeast Asia because there's more to learn aside from the touristic features of Southeast Asia. So I think we should go beyond that idea because right now Korea is one of the major uh, tourists in or to visitors in Southeast Asia, but there seemed to be a disconnect in terms of the number of Koreans coming to Southeast Asia and the deepening of understanding of the Korean society as regards to, Southeast Asian nations.
Okay.
Fourth,
Thank you.
perhaps
Yeah.
all the local government units in South Korea should also have their engagement with the cultural activities being organized by organizations such as ASEAN Korea Center because the reach is quite limited. In 1 year there could be only like few programs or there are several programs, but it's confined in several areas like Seoul or Busan. So it should be, there should be a consolidated effort not just from the national government, but also the local government when you talk about cultural activities by these organizations, because this is where the funds goes, right? The funding should be well appropriated in this particular cause. And
Okay.
lastly, can I just add one more?
Yes, sir.
We should be able to address the gaps or insufficiency of information about ASEAN countries uh, given to Korean students. There's a news article that was published in December 2019 citing the limited and improper teaching of Southeast Asian history in Korea. So there's a need for us to basically, I think, make some reforms or at least add new programs that would somehow further enhance the knowledge of Korean students about Southeast Asia and also India. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are very insightful comments on the cultural and education aspect of NSP+. I move on now to the non-conventional security priority area. How do you think, given the existing security and strategic cooperation between ASEAN and the United States and China, is there room for South Korea? And in the same way, will Korea change its position in allowing other strategic networks beyond the major powers in addressing its security or even non-traditional security issues on the Korean Peninsula? Can we have someone address this question, please?
Sure. Hi, Reza. I can speak on that.
Hi, Dr. Yo. Yeah.
Hi. So, I mean, one of my suggestions is to really try to link the NSP, the NSP Plus now to other regional initiatives. And we've already seen the NSP visibility grow, and we've seen that other countries have wanted to try to connect their own regional initiatives to the NSP. For instance, last November, South Korea and the United States agreed to pursue greater cooperation and coordination between NSP and the US Indo-Pacific strategy. China has done the same with their Belt and Road Initiative. Australia has sought greater coordination between the NSP and the Indo-Pacific policy. And of course, the NSP's 3 pillars and the ASEAN outlook of the Indo-Pacific share many of the same goals. So on one hand, the NSP Plus is broad enough that you can find natural linkages, but I think the devil is in the details. It's easy to talk about these sort of synergies, but to actually implement them takes hard work, a lot of diplomatic effort, and finding areas that we can pursue joint projects. So even though rhetorically you can talk about connecting the NSP to some of these other regional initiatives, I mean, just to ask a rhetorical question, what if, why would South Korea want to coordinate with the United States or Australia and pursuing development and financing for internet infrastructure when it's much easier to just go it alone and have Korean companies like Samsung or LG work with local partners? Now, fortunately, I think the need is so great in things like digital infrastructure in the region, or even here in the Philippines, that you could, that other countries, Korea, Australia, China, they could all work in this area, but there could be some type of cooperation or coordination. And so that's something that the NSP can look to, I think, in terms of addressing the peace pillar component, the tradition, whether it's traditional or non-traditional security, without making it look like it's trying to insert its own policy. And again, the NSP is not a strategic policy, but if there's concern that the NSP is trying to assert Korea's territory within the region, I mean, certainly if you can try to find connections with these other regional initiatives that are taking place. I have more general comments about South Korea's middle power strategy to this, but I think I'll stop there just to let other participants chime in as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yo. I'd like to cover a question on, I would like to discuss on the economic or the prosperity pillar. So of the 3 pillars of the NSP, and perhaps Dr. Kim Jong-un could address this, this specific priority area. Of the 3 pillars of the NSP, the prosperity pillar, focusing on economic cooperation, has made early successes and most progress. Related to this, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, which was mentioned during the first session, it's expected to generate huge jobs or generate more jobs because of the huge economic impact to the Philippines. Dr. Kim, how do you think the NSP Plus can take advantage of this?
Yes. So you first mentioned RCEP. So I'd like to share my opinion on what the NSP Plus should be, focusing on economic sector. So as I mentioned earlier, Korea need to move forward with new policy initiatives that break away from one-way policy for the benefit of Korea. So to do so, we need cooperation in the areas Korea, ASEAN, or India all they want. It means in the first session mentioned, for example, Philippines has some strategic area of investment, foreign investments. So Korean government and companies should think about the needs of partner countries more actively or strongly. So, in the last session mentioned, trade investment relationship between Korea and ASEAN or India is becoming more important for both sides in terms of GB's building in the new era of trade order. And from the perspective of Korea, I think Korea has relative limitations in resources compared to countries that already have close ties with ASEAN and India, like, for example, US, China, or Japan. So I think it's very important to find what Korea can do well, corresponding to the needs of ASEAN countries and India. So in this regard, we conduct a survey to experts in ASEAN and India and what they need for NSP plus. So based on this, ASEAN and Indian experts expect that Korea's role in such areas as the digital economy, infrastructure like smart cities, and e-government is feasible. And it is also suggested that Korea would be able to gain a competitive edge in areas such as building digital capabilities and building human resources and expanding free trade order and technology transfer and exchange. I think it would be Korea's primary task to find tangible projects in which Korea, ASEAN, and India can cooperate in these areas. So I think it will be a challenge for Korea to find new ideas of cooperation with the mid and long-term vision, and it will be important to maintain close dialogue channels with ASEAN and India in major cooperation areas. And as you mentioned, RCEP, Korea now, among Korean policymakers and researchers, we think about the new form of FTA. For example, so if Korea's FTA was centered on market opening in the past, now Korea's future FTAs, we think, need to present new models that emphasize development and sector-specific cooperation, or even human resources building. And also, I think strengthening the capabilities of small and medium enterprises of both sides will also be an important task in the future. And in this regard, NSP could contribute to the traditional form of FTAs and widen the range of cooperation between Korea and ASEAN and India. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Does anyone want to add something more on how Korea can take advantage of RCEP? Yeah, Professor Isla, yes, please. Please unmute, sir.
NSP Plus aims to develop mutually beneficial trade relations and investment between ASEAN and Korea. And I think this is a good opportunity to explore investments on e-commerce, fintech, especially now that many Southeast Asian countries, because of the pandemic, are shifting towards e-commerce. So speaking of having a mutually beneficial trade relations, I believe that South Korea should have a consistent consultation on customs-related matters to further optimize trade relations. And I think they've already included this in our ASEAN ROK plan of action for 2021-2025. And this is a good opportunity to basically interact with ASEAN member states when you talk about free trade, because when I was working with the ASEAN Korea Center, there has been issues as regards to how to optimize trade relations between ASEAN and also Korea. So there's also a need to help Korean businessmen understand how Southeast Asian nations conduct their business. There are many business forums being conducted in South Korea that talks about Southeast Asia, but the focus is more on how to set up a business, how to to go around you know the the requirements needed to set up a business. But there's a need to further understand the business culture of Southeast Asia because it's quite diverse, and through, as I mentioned, in the people-to-people exchanges, there's also a need to deepen the understanding of the Korean businessmen on how Southeast Asian nations are doing their own business. So, moreover, I believe that Korea should also try to reach out to ASEAN countries to address the imbalance in terms of Korean investments. Right now, investments from Korea are skewed towards the CLMV countries. Though I understand that there is a reason why investments are pouring into the CLMV sub-region. It's because of the disparity between the member states. However, there's also a need to pour in investments in the BIMP-AYAGA region because that's where I think many projects have been lagging behind. So I think NSP is a good opportunity for South Korea to ramp up its investment and also trade relations using the RCEP.
Okay, thank you, Professor Isla. I go back to the non-traditional security because this has been the it's the 7th priority area. How can South Korea contribute to ASEAN's collective capacity in responding to non-traditional security threats? The Philippines, we're surrounded by non-traditional security threats. So what could be NSP Plus's role on this? We're talking about transnational crimes, we're talking about cybersecurity, climate change. So what do you think could be NSP Plus advantage when it comes to addressing these issues? May we hear from perhaps Dr. Yo, if you can respond to this?
I thought Professor Cruz gave a really, shared some really interesting insight by saying how many of the issues in dealing with COVID-19 are related to one another with climate change, with sustainable development issues, even issues related to migration patterns. I mean, in the sense that the NSP kind of pulls all these things together, I think that might be a way where the NSP is an advantage of addressing non-traditional security. So the advantage is not that you have new or more initiatives per se, although we are seeing that, but it's that you begin to link these issues within one framework, in this case, the NSP Plus.
Okay. Dr. Ong, would you like to respond to this also?
Sorry about that. Today's my job is focusing on either the cultural exchange because I'm not an economist, I'm not the political scientist, so I focus the cultural exchange. The specifically book. And I add the. Is it possible to add the one thing? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, please.
The about the Hallyu, in my thought, the drama and K-drama or the K-pop shows only the, how do I say, the bright side of the Korea. But in contrast, I think the book is very different. Korea seen from the outside is already advanced countries, but within the Korean society, issues like the socio-economic inequality, political conflicts, and discrimination against the minority and the gender. This kind of issues very hard, very serious. So in that means, I think the book is more reflective reflective, and then it shows the different kinds of social situation and phenomena. I think that the Philippines is also. So I think this kind of a job of the professor-based translation, I believe it will be an opportunity for intellectually conscious citizens in Korea and ASEAN or Korean and Philippine citizens will make the different kind of the cooperation. Yeah, that's all.
May I
Dr.
perhaps?
So yeah, Professor Cruz.
I do like to touch on this point about the translation. I think that these days everything is multimedial. And I do think that that is a way to promote something like niche diplomacy in South Korea, because if you focus on something like green growth, which I think is a very strong message, first, it gives policy an identity. It's not just something quite broad that anyone else can do. Saying that I'm going to do green environmental diplomacy gives someone immediately a brand, right? And if everything follows, I do think that that brand will be given some kind of structure, it'll stick into the minds of people, just like everyone knows these contemporary brands like McDonald's. The minute they think South Korea, they'll think something green, right? I do think that multimedial messaging is very important, and that can be linked to Hallyu, for example. I'll give you an example maybe from Japan. Everyone knows Miyazaki films, and everyone knows that Miyazaki films have an environmental message, right? Even though it's not explicitly said, this is the inherent message of the thing. And I do think that subtle messaging through culture and even through technology is a great idea in this particular age, considering millennials and Gen Z, how we tick. For example, like Globe these days has a Gcash, and if you use Gcash, you get to grow a tree, right? And you know how people are just sitting around these days in quarantine, and it's hard to go out, and people are afraid to go out. I do think that's a great way to promote something that can be used for the environment or garbage cleanup or anything that is related to disaster management. Just thinking of new and creative ways to involve the youth, to involve a lot of people and get them interested in the issue without being overly preachy about it. And I do think that this sounds kind of vague, but this is extremely effective. I mean, 6 million trees grown just because of this simple app. Hundreds of, I think recently, the effect of culture can be seen in The Queen's Gambit. So there was this Netflix show called The Queen's Gambit, and suddenly 100,000 people are signing up for chess, right? So I do think this is a great idea. However, translation, just to harken that point, I don't know if we have a very strong reading culture in the Philippines. So Dr. Aom, I hate to disappoint you, but it's just, a lot of people go to Manila International Book Fair, but I don't know how many people are actually doing reading quite regularly. So a multimedial approach is something that is worth investing in to promote all sorts of initiatives also related to climate change, disaster management, etc. I think the linguistics department has done a great job, for example, at taking language and applying it to climate or even disaster management, COVID pandemic awareness, because this is a multilingual country. So maybe look into that.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much, Professor Cruz. So let's have the open forum at this point. The session is now open for questions. So you may send your questions through the YouTube chat box. In the interest of time, may I request our speakers, our panelists, and the discussants during the session, the first session, to please provide or to please keep your comments as concise as possible. So I will be reading a few questions that have been collected throughout the session. I'll give the questions in sets of 3. All of you, or if you want, some of you may respond to this. So the first one would be, with the current medical R&D advancements of South Korea, is there a plan by the Korean government to create their own COVID-19 vaccine and distribute it to ASEAN countries as part of NSP+? Okay. Related to this, with the COVID-19 cases continuing to rise rapidly, how will this implicitly affect the relation building between the South and North Korea? And will South Korea's progress in ensuring peace and stability within the Korean Peninsula be difficult, knowing that the newly elected US President Joe Biden has called the North Korean leader a thug? Okay. And the last question for this first set would be, cultural exchanges aside, how would ASEAN countries make significant contributions in other aspects not only acting as receivers, but also as main actors to this NSP Plus. So is there a specific stipulation in NSP that ensures ASEAN won't be merely receivers, but also contributors? The panelists, as well as the speakers during the first session, can address the questions.
Hi, Reza. I'll
Dr.
tackle the first two questions really briefly.
Okay.
In terms of the COVID-19 vaccine in South Korea, my understanding is that they may be working on it, but they're not as far ahead as the United States or perhaps China. And I don't know if because there was so much attention to COVID-19 prevention spreading that there wasn't as much done to think about vaccine or a policy even to how to implement vaccination. So I don't see that in the works for NSP. It's more about things like how to do testing, like how to do proper testing or protocols for testing. So it's more in that area, but not sharing of medical technology. But on the vaccination specifically, I don't really see that right now as part of NSP. And in terms of inter-Korea relations in the middle of COVID-19, I mean, it's like a double-edged sword. On one hand, really nothing physically can happen because North Korea has such a strict, because of their own low health capacity, they have a very strict lockdown, and only until very recently they've allowed some of the border to open to allow goods to come in from China. But at the same time, there's certainly opportunities for cooperation, and South Korea has repeatedly said that we should really try to support North Korea, our northern neighbors, by sending PPEs, by doing whatever we can to share medical supplies and information. But North Korea really hasn't responded, or they haven't really responded positively to those gestures. So unfortunately, even though I think the intention or the will is there of the Moon government to do more on COVID-19 diplomacy with North Korea, it hasn't been reciprocated by the North. And when it comes to the United States, calling names, Trump called Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man, and they talked about their buttons. And so we saw that kind of rhetoric from the Trump administration as well too. But that didn't seem to stop North Korea when it really wanted to, especially when it was seeking to have sanctions removed. It didn't stop the North Koreans from talking or negotiating with the United States. So I don't see that as being a problem per se in restarting U.S.-North Korea relations.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yo. Any other comments? Yes, Professor Isla, please.
Yes, I just want to address the question about the development of vaccine for COVID-19. I think South Korea can share many insights about its strategy in fighting COVID-19, not just about the vaccine itself, right? And providing funds. It's also about the national strategies in combating infectious diseases, for example, in terms of detection, in terms of how did they contain the virus, the level of restrictions or the policies related to the level of restrictions, and how they treat COVID patients, and making sure that the healthcare will not be overburdened. I think that's the strength of South Korea that can be somehow shared with ASEAN countries. South Korea can also actively take part in preparing the region for combating emerging and infectious diseases through research collaboration and also exchanges among scientists. Because if there's one thing that we learn from this pandemic is that the pandemic will occur again in some other time. We don't know exactly when, but we need to be ready as a region because most of the time we're the first one to receive these kind of infectious diseases. So there's really to further strengthen collaboration in this particular area.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the first session who wants to respond to the questions a while ago? Yes, Dr. Choi, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting discussion going on in the second panel. I'd like to briefly address the first question about the vaccine. You know that number one priority in the NSP Plus is public health cooperation. And yeah, of course, the detailed information about the NSP Plus pilot program is not released, but it is underway. It is under preparation. So sooner or later, they will release the information to the general public and media. But I think, as President Moon mentioned in his statement in ASEAN Plus 3 summit, Korea, we emphasize fair access to vaccine. That's a very important part of our public health program. So on the one hand, we have a R&D program and try to develop our own vaccine. And also, I think we have some contracts made to purchase vaccine. And also, I think in terms of the ODA budget, I think they do have some programs to help provide the vaccine to partners in Southeast Asia. So I think we do have a program for that. And well, I don't specifically remember the question about North Korea, but actually in the initial period of the New Southern policy, we did have some high expectations especially from Southeast Asian countries about their role in DPRK issue. You know that all 10 ASEAN countries have diplomatic relations with DPRK. And I believe that I know that 6 countries have their own diplomatic mission in Pyongyang. So first of all, the President Moon's top priority is also the Korean Peninsula peace process. So I would like to have some sort of strong support from Southeast Asian partners about that, countries about that. And also, you know that Singapore and Vietnam hosted the first and second round of US-DPRK summit. I think that's a very huge contribution. So in that way, I think we expect Southeast Asian countries to play a greater role in mediating DPRK with international community. Either mediating that kind of the high-profile summit. Also, if we have some sort of, if it is possible to have some sort of the bilateral and trilateral engagement at different areas and different levels, whenever possible, with DPRK, I think that is also very good thing. So we do support that kind of the active mediating role of ASEAN countries if opportunity allows. And also if DPRK, the nuclear issue is resolved later on, when DPRK is at the stage of economic reform and opening up, some Southeast Asian countries do have experience, right? Like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. So they can do something about that. So, so in that regard, I think even if the DPRK and Korean Peninsula issue is not the explicit item in the Southern policy, we do have expectations. So if things go, things get improved and things get better regarding the North Korean issue, I think we do have more things that we can do together about the DPRK. Okay.
All right. Perhaps we can have one last question. I'd like to raise the question of Dr. Yo. How much recognition does NSP receive here in the Philippines? How aware are the Filipinos about NSP in the business community or among educators or policy elites relative to the attention NSP seems to be receiving in Indonesia or Malaysia? Is the Republic of Korea doing a good job in promoting or branding the NSP in the Philippines? Does anyone want to respond to that? Perhaps those from the first session can respond to this. Dr. Rabena or Dr. Palumbarit? Okay, Dr. Jonggun Kim. Okay,
yeah,
sir.
So I am somewhat involved in the process of making NSP Plus. So I know little. So first, we conduct a survey on ASEAN and Indian experts, and their recognition of NSP is modest, I think, overall. So we do not have exact information how much Philippine experts or people knows NSP, but overall the NSP region's recognition on NSP is until now modest level. And Professor Yo's question is about how Korean government is promoting and branding the NSP. And so, frankly speaking, Korean government now is the presidential committee of NSP is charged of promoting and branding the NSP, and they are now making. First thing is that they're making a policy paper in English. So at the initial moment, there's no policy paper about NSP and just some short pamphlet on NSP. So now Korean government is making somewhat detailed policy paper on NSP, and it will be open soon. So you may see it sooner or later. And so as far as I know, Korean government think that the promotion of NSP is very important, especially in ASEAN and India. So they will make an effort to promote it in ASEAN in the future. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Dr. Palumbarit.
Yes, about the NSP. It's a new policy, and assessing its impact, I think it's too early. I will go back to my previous point about NSP, because there are policy tasks that are not really clear. So once these are clarified, they're communicated to the people, they are made aware to the people, and I think it's time to involve these people. And one example really is cultural exchanges. They are not very clear even in policy task papers. So I think rather than just introducing Korean culture here, why not involve the people themselves and consult them on these matters? And I think it would be a very meaningful exchange between the two peoples. Otherwise, it will be just, if not, perhaps I would say this is cultural imperialism, cultural imposition. It should be seen as a win-win solution for both. We both learn from each other. And I think cultural exchanges can be really strengthened in that manner. So first things for me is really to clarify what these things mean, communicated to the people, and involve the people, so as to really give a meaningful, really cooperation between the two countries on the people-to-people level.
Dr. Abena?
Okay, thank you, Professor Raisa. I think on the question of the lack of awareness, I guess, in the Philippines of the NSP, I think that's not exclusive to South Korea. Because even when you talk of the Belt and Road Initiative, many Filipinos are also not aware of the Belt and Road, except debt traps. Debt traps are very popular in the Philippines. And also the same is true in the case of the Indo-Pacific strategy. So I think publics in various countries do not really look at policy statements, but they look at the tangibles or the deliverables. So I guess if they really see concrete things that are taking place, then I guess that will raise their awareness about the policy.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Okay, before we wrap up session 2, any final comments or insights from our panelists, just very briefly? Yeah, Dr. Yo, please.
Just to follow up on Dr. Rabina's point on this idea of promoting the NSP, and we have to also keep in mind that the NSP doesn't exist in a strategic vacuum. As Dr. Rabina mentioned, there's the Belt and Road Initiative. Japan has its own initiatives in Southeast Asia, same as Australia and the United States. And within this landscape, with Korea trying to promote the NSP, there are all these other countries that want to do more in Southeast Asia. Everyone is moving westward. And so I think because of that, if you just think of NSP and all the different bilateral agreements that are in place, it looks like South Korea is doing a lot. But that's why I again think that the NSP has to connect with other regional initiatives to give it bigger legs, to give it a bigger profile. And sometimes that means wading into the strategic front as well too. But that's something to be worked out in the South Korean government and the NSP committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Choi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to make 2 points. The first one is about the cultural exchanges. The cultural exchange is really a top priority of NSP from the beginning, right? That's why we put the people first in the among the 3 pillars. So there are a lot of efforts going on about in promoting cultural exchanges. For example, in Busan, Korea, you have ASEAN Cultural House, which was opened several years ago. The mandate of this particular organization is to promote ASEAN culture among Koreans, not the other way around. So we aim for a 2-way kind of the cultural exchanges. And also, if you look at the programs of NSC Plus, the second priority area, because of the difficulty of travel under COVID-19 situations, right? We try to open up some online platform in which we can experience the cultural, have some cultural experiences. So under the current constraint, we do try to promote the cultural exchanges and public awareness about each other's culture. My second point is about the strategic aspect of NSP. Of course, you do have strategic dimensions and implications of NSP, but as I pointed out before, the strategic dimension does not get high profile in NSP. That's intentional. We do not try to present NSP as a strategic agenda. We do have some strategic convergence and considerations with ASEAN and other countries. For example, there are lots of things going on between Korea and United States in terms of promoting the common ground between NSP and US Indo-Pacific. For example, about a month ago, we did have the second fact sheet came out of the meeting from the vice minister level. Stilwell and the deputy foreign minister of Korea produced a fact sheet listing some of the kind of cooperations going on in non-traditional security areas and some other areas. So still, even with the low profile, right? So lots of things are going on right now, but we do not try to present this as some sort of strategic item. I think that's the bottom line of the government approach on this issue. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chue. Okay, that concludes our session 2. Thank you very much, everyone, for your active participation. We would like to again extend our gratitude to our speakers, our discussants, and our participants for joining us this morning. If you have more questions or if you want more updates on the Congress and future events of the KRC, you may visit its Facebook page at UP Korea Research Center. It's available at www.facebook.com/UPKRC and its YouTube channel. That formally concludes our session for today. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you so much.
Sir Mark, good to see you again.
Thank you, Raisa.
Thank you, sir.